I think there's a certain harsh string in your character.
There is.
You don't seem to take it into account in all of this and think it's normal to behave this way.
I don't think that anymore.
But as you're talking, I'm looking at your husband. He's genuinely in shock.
From me?
Yes, if someone is in shock from another person, there's a serious reason for it, especially regarding his father. He's just boiling with indignation.
Yes.
There must also be a reason for that. They're not insane. You still haven't told me why these people reacted so strongly.
Because I didn't listen to what my husband and my father-in-law said.
But that's wrong.
I understand that now. I've been listening to your lectures for several months.
So, my dear, you've just told me all of this, and I'm sure everyone in the auditorium who heard you thought that these people are just crazy. But I see a completely different situation. For instance, I look at these events and see that you behaved very harshly. You had a very tough style. You even insulted them at times.
I did, yes.
You behaved very harshly and uncompromisingly, and you just escalated the situation to madness. What happened is simply a result of that. Your husband, in fact, is quite a patient person, but he is principled. Right now, he's not building a relationship with you out of principle because he's against such an approach to life. He's against this madness, the unwillingness, the madness of rebellion and revolution. You probably learned this from your father, right?
From my mother.
From your mother, huh? Well, you learned it from someone, but what I see now is that you've created this in your life. It's just madness. You've destroyed your family because the culture of relationships can be different. From the perspective of the sacred scriptures, if a son listens to his father, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a sign of upbringing and literacy in relationships. If the father is a reasonable person, and he is quite a kind and wise man, yet principled, he was giving you advice kindly. He wasn't speaking to you out of malice, but quite reasonably and kindly. His main mission was to help you submit to your husband, but you didn't want to submit to him.
I've realized that.
So what do you want from me now?
I just want to know if we have a chance to get through this. Can we be together?
Does he communicate with your children?
Yes.
I don't know if there are chances for everything in this world. Perhaps there are, but this person is in a state of intense indignation towards you, so convincing him to live with you. I don't know how to do that. You need to completely change as a person because for about 2.5 years you've been driving him crazy with your behavior. He tolerated it all, but then he couldn't take it anymore, and now he's in a state of shock regarding you. He's afraid of you. He's even scared to think about you. Do you want to go back to how things were after all this?
I will try.
Trying is definitely necessary because you're currently being punished with loneliness for that behavior. You have a very heavy mark on you. The Lord doesn't want to give you anyone else right now. You need to repent and restore your relationships. Either you'll bring your husband back or you'll get someone else. That's how this world works. You won't get anyone just like that. You've already tried to build a relationship. You saw the result. The person just grew cold towards you, and that's it. The reason is your heart. Your heart currently doesn't attract men. It's in antagonism with the masculine essence because you've rejected the very principle of male existence. I mentioned in my lecture yesterday what respect for a man is. All women have heard that a man needs only one thing. He needs to be recognized for who he was born to be. He was born to win, to be the elder, to be strong, to be responsible. He spends all his strength and life on this. If a woman doesn't want to acknowledge that, then the man doesn't need anything from her. She simply rises against the very masculine essence, just as a man who doesn't treat a woman tenderly or gently, who doesn't concede her the right to be happy. He doesn't give her the opportunity to enjoy life in her feminine body, then what use is such a man? He's rejecting the feminine essence itself. I don't see your former husband that way. He's a business-like person, busy, but he never treated you cruelly. He was simply principled against such an attitude toward himself. You dismissed every word of his, and that's unacceptable, because all relationships in this world are built with God. People are merely instruments in his hands. You owe God now. You need to repent. Think about this, and you need prayer, repentance, and...
I'm doing everything prayer.
You've only overcome 4% of 100%. You've been engaged in this. Just think about how much time you've spent on other things. So you need to think about your fate now, not about whether this person will return or not, because that's not what it's about right now. It's about prolonged loneliness, 5 to 6 years. You need to repent and overcome your fate, trying to build a good relationship with him, asking for forgiveness from his father, from him, from everyone, and understand that your mother didn't teach you the right things.
I've already realized that, but it's too late.
A woman has the right to kindly assert her interests. She has the right to tell her husband 1,000 times kindly that she needs this in her life. 1,000 times, but not through anger, harshness, and rejection of the person. Because a woman has such power, a woman's psyche is several times stronger than a man's. If she wants to, she can create such a life for a man that he'll be climbing the walls. But she has the right to use that only in extreme cases when the situation is really tough. But if a woman starts behaving this way in all situations, feeling that power within her and suppressing men, then she will have to answer for that.
Thank you.
But don't be upset. You're listening to lectures developing yourself. The prospects of these relationships are such that if you really try hard, I give you a 15% chance out of 80 that he will return. In a year and a half, you will have a husband, either this one or another. I'm sure that will happen. Your question, sir.
Hello, Dr. Torsunov. There are all sorts of entities. I'd like to know your feelings about this and how one might see them through visual channels.
Yes, I want to teach everyone about various entities so that we all march together to the mental hospital. I have never tried to see any entities. I have always only tried to help people in my life. There are two categories of people. Some have a demonic disposition while others do not. Let me explain the difference. A demonic understanding of things is that a person wants to gain superpowers and engages in various practices for this purpose. How they will use these powers later is their personal business. Now, the divine way of acting is that a person does not want any superpowers. They genuinely want to help others. When this desire reaches a certain point, the Lord grants knowledge about others through the heart. The Lord knows everything. He knows about us and everyone around us. The Lord resides directly in the heart. If I honestly and sincerely want to help someone, and I am open to that knowledge. Some people reject everything that arises in their hearts, claiming it's an illusion. They believe that everything that is printed or written is true, while anything that arises in the heart is an illusion. Many people think this way. It's just imagination, they say, but I don't see it that way. I believe that everything that arises within us has a very deep reason, one that we don't fully understand. I simply trust what the Lord tells me in my heart. This faith has been reinforced by long experience, so it strengthens each time. As for entities, they are dangerous. I can feel these various entities, but if a person becomes deeply involved with them, they end up in a mental hospital. All these entities are mentally stronger than a person, and while they can be sensed, one should not give them too much significance. There are people who are simply obsessed with these various entities and try to see them in everyone. These same people constantly tell others, "You have been cursed, you have spirits." They keep saying this to everyone. If you focus a person's attention on spirits, then they will attract more spirits. If a person thinks about spirits, they become more attached to them. Thus, simply knowing that spirits exist and can influence people's consciousness is dangerous in this regard. People lack spiritual strength, and when they try to use this knowledge, they end up constantly thinking about spirits, and they encourage everyone else to do the same. This is how crowds march straight to the mental hospital. Why? Because those who genuinely want to help people should, on the contrary, turn people's consciousness away from this. They should guide people's minds to see God and think about Him. When the sun rises, all fireflies go out. This is said in the Vedas. Spirits, like fireflies, are visible. They have power. But compared to God, they are nothing. When people think about God, the spirits say, "Goodbye." Therefore, we need to encourage people to think about God. It is not even necessary to tell them that some entities may influence them because this knowledge is inherently dangerous. It binds them even more to those entities. However, if a person wants to prove their superpowers to everyone, they do so by scaring people. They say, "You have this many spirits inside you. You have been cursed. You have been hexed." The aim of these words is simple: to elicit either respect or money from a person, to scare them and make them dependent on oneself. That is the only goal. This can be conscious or unconscious, and it's called demonism. Therefore, if someone tells you that you have been cursed or spoiled, or that you have spirits within you, do not engage with that person anymore, because that person is leading you directly to the mental hospital. Did I answer your questions? Thank you. There's a woman next to you. Please ask.
Hello, Dr. Torsunov. Thank you very much for your books and lectures. I'm very passionate about them. In the last 6 months, I've had a problem. I've answered many questions for myself, thanks to your lectures. But I would like to ask you. I've entered a difficult period because my relationship with my daughter has significantly deteriorated. She wanted to destroy her family, and now she's ruining her relationship with me.
She behaves very emotionally.
Yes, and this impacts our family relationship with my granddaughter. The second problem is that I was running a very successful business. I am a musician, and my business is related to children. I had my own studio in Saratov and a television project that was very successful for 10 years. Well, then I had to get a job at a school for the last 2 years. But I don't regret it.
What position did you take at the school?
I became an arts teacher.
You are a leader by nature, not a musician.
For me, it feels like a different level.
Yes, definitely.
Therefore, it's very valuable. It's psychologically very difficult for me to cope with this, even though I listen to your lectures.
You need to go back to leadership, organize something. You can do it. Your difficult period ended 2 months ago. It was related to your inability to manage your business. Now you need to take action. Especially since during this difficult period, you gained knowledge. Now you can do everything on a new level. If a person flies like a crane, trying to make them into a sparrow is simply absurd. If you go to the administration and talk about what you want to do, there will be proposals. You have the strength, connections, and opportunities for this. You don't need to underestimate your abilities. People respect and love you, so you should take action, especially since you have knowledge and people currently need uplifting art. Look at what's happening now. They sing all sorts of nonsense, just to keep people entertained while they could be singing beauty. You've heard how many beautiful songs we have here. Someone needs to do that. You should pursue it. One person will come along who will help you with everything. Seek them out. This person is waiting for you. God has already found such a person for you. Your question, please have a seat.
Dr. Torsunov, you came to Saratov. We are very grateful to you. Why didn't you come earlier? Although we learned yesterday that it all started here in Saratov, could this be related to the energy of our city? If so, do you have any advice on how to live successfully and positively in our city?
You've said it all, but that's not true. I swam in the Volga today. The energy here is simply fantastic. But you know, for a long time there was no one to organize lectures in Saratov. And then when these guys invited me 2 years ago, my schedule was so tight that it was difficult to find time to come. Although I repeat once again that I started from Saratov, I don't think that there is bad energy or bad people here. On the contrary, I really like it here, and it's most likely that fate acted this way. I grew up on the Volga in Tolyatti. I studied in Samara, which is also on the banks of the Volga. You know, as they say, there are no prophets in their own land. That means that where a person lives, they don't give lectures for some reason. But I heard you, thank you. I got the hint. I'll come more often, but I can't come more than once a year. Yes, I haven't answered about your daughter yet. She's entered a bad period. There is a certain mental exhaustion. This bad period will end in about 3-4 months. She will calm down. But in general, it's because of the wrong lifestyle. She either gets stuck on the computer a lot, or she is in the environment that exhausts her. And if we add here a bad period, that's why she is now in a semi-adequate state. That means that it's difficult for her to communicate with people. In general, she's in such a state. But you see, this is what I'm talking about now in my lectures. It's a serious catastrophe when people are simply going in the wrong direction in life. And this catastrophe affects many families, especially children. They believe in what they see in front of them, immerse themselves in this lifestyle, and then get such catastrophic consequences that they become like plants. I also have a young relative, a young guy. I'm also trying to pull him out of the computer. That's why I give these seminars, because everything starts with oneself. A person has to start living right themselves, and others will follow, because consciousness is transmitted from person to person. When a person starts, everyone else does the same. People were standing there in swimsuits on the bank of the Volga. We got into the water. Everyone else wanted to get in too. Consciousness is transmitted. Are you communicating? Do you have a connection in your heart? You have a connection, and I don't know what you did, but you're already feeling better about her. You're already calm. You've already accepted her as she is. That's the first stage. The victory on 30% has passed. And you're on the verge of the second. You just need to pray a little more, and she will begin to perceive. You will understand what fate is, how it acts, that there aren't any obstacles. There's just the work of the soul. This means that if you start praying, remember her, and think you are praying for her, you will need to pray for 2 weeks. And you will have a feeling in your heart that you can talk to her and she will listen to you, and that's how it will happen. Even though she's in a bad period, you will establish a bridge to her. You need to live like this, overcome your fate with your own strength. You shouldn't allow fate to capture space in your life. That means that now your fate is acting this way. You felt helpless. There's a reason for this. The reason lies in your development. That means that you can do this. You just don't know how, and I'm explaining it to you. Listen to those who pray and pray with them. Set yourself up for their sound and periodically remember your daughter. It's all for her. Gradually, at first, you will see calmness in your heart. Then you will feel that you can communicate with her. Then the situation will change, and it all happens gradually in your heart. This way, every person can change their relationships completely, also with a person who feels terrible resentment towards you. You can change everything. You can just pray. A lady asked me if she would return and live with her husband or not. If I were her, I needed to pray for half a year and everything would be back to normal. But you should know how to do this. If there's no experience, no strength, no understanding, then what can I say? Because fate is always the work of the soul. It's not like when people ask me when they will get married. It's unknown. That means that everything depends on how much one will work with their soul. You don't ask me, when will I clean my dirty kitchen? Well, when you clean it, then you clean it. Sometimes a person lives so badly in their past life that they can't cope with everything God has shown them in this life. I think that you should now spend less time thinking about your mother and concentrate more on self-care. Because if you pay too much attention to how your mother lives, you will lose yourself as a person. Because you don't have the strength to cope with what's happening to her. Her fate is very difficult and hard to overcome. You need to develop yourself now, pray, work on yourself, move, do exercises, wish everyone happiness, watch what you need to watch, don't watch what you shouldn't watch. That means start changing your own life, and your mother will also change gradually. But now if you get too involved in helping your mother, you will burn out there. I said in yesterday's lecture that in relationships with ignorant people, a person should keep a sufficient distance, because they can burn out mentally. Your distance is too close. The reason is your desire to experience happiness from your mother. You are not destined to experience happiness from your mother. Experience happiness from God, from other people. It won't work from your mother. You understand? You will simply burn out. You need to keep distance from your father and mother now. Have you been listening for a long time or not? You need distance. You need to lift yourself up now, because your mental state is not in such a great condition to help someone. Are you married? Don't let her look in that direction. There's a trap for her there. She will burn out there and lose herself. She thinks she can help them. It's an illusion. Let her help herself first. Do you have children? Help your children. Help your daughter to help her husband. Whatever good things God has given you, live by them. Pray for them as much as you can. Only help them through prayer. Write text messages. Mom, I love you. Dad, you're good. And so on. Give gifts. Don't build close relationships. Don't talk to them a lot. You're ruining your life this way. The time will come when you will start helping them, when your heart will not feel despair towards your parents, but a sense of strength that you can approach them. Now you don't have such strength. You have a feeling of hopelessness and despair towards them. This means that you are like a moth flying into a fire. When a person experiences pain and despair from something, and they go there, they will get the same thing that a frog gets from a boa constrictor. This is exactly this scheme. So there are 3 categories of people. Study this knowledge. This is very profound knowledge. There are people in the state of goodness. You should communicate with them more closely. There are people in passion. You should communicate with them based on common interests in a kind manner. That means almost all people are in passion. For example, the husband has his own interests regarding the family, but the husband doesn't want to develop. He lives in passion. Fine. He's interested in raising a child, saving money for an apartment. So communicate with him based on these interests and gradually change his interests with the help of blessed food, spiritual atmosphere, and gradually enlighten the person. That means that you shouldn't keep too much distance from people in passion, but you also shouldn't get too close to them, because they won't understand you and your spiritual pursuits. On the contrary, they will get scared and say that you're being dragged into some kind of sect. Although you see that no one is dragging you into any sect, you remain in your faith. Moreover, I have an opportunity to give online lectures. Do you know about this? I also give online lectures. That means that once a month you can communicate with me, gathering in small groups, and we have a good people club with which I was photographed there near the wall. They will conduct these online seminars, and if they don't conduct them, then you can listen from home, but in this case you can't directly ask a question. But there I can see you can see me, and you can ask a question. We also have online lectures by Father Ambrose, who is an Orthodox monk, and he gives lectures on the lives of saints. Although I am not an Orthodox, therefore no one can accuse me of dragging anyone anywhere. If a serious Muslim leader appears who wants to give lectures on my resources, I will gladly provide a place for them as well. That means that I simply want people to develop and go to God, each in their own way. This is my desire and my idea. Therefore, if someone accuses you of being carried away, no, you are being carried to the right place, because all people in passion are afraid to develop. They live in their own space and consider people in pure goodness to be a bit weird. People in degradation consider people in passion to be weird as well. That means that they think that people in passion are kind of crazy, because they don't understand that money can be easily obtained by simply robbing a bank, and people in pure goodness are completely out of their minds for them. That means that people of each category live their own life. All these people in pure goodness, in passion, in degradation, they don't understand each other, and therefore if you have started working on yourself, you will face enormous difficulty in life. You will face such difficulty that most people are afraid to work on themselves, afraid to think about developing themselves, afraid of prayer, afraid of conscience, afraid of spiritual life, and afraid of faith. They think that all this will lead them into some kind of nightmare in which they will live in terrible conditions. This world is arranged in such a way that you have to pay a price for everything. That means that if you want to develop, you will have to feel a little lonely in this world at first, and then you will feel like you're in a big family. Because people in pure goodness live in a big family. They have close relationships with each other. People in passion stay all together. There are many of them. They stick together, but they are all lonely. Although they pretend to be so successful, well, this is all just an appearance. They suffer. People in degradation suffer even more, but pretend that they are the coolest in this world. That means that it's just self-deception, an illusion. And these people, your parents, live in degradation. They can't be helped with words. They can get help if they start crying out for it and asking, "Help me." They don't ask you for help. They talk about how bad they feel and that you should somehow comfort them, do something about it, but this won't help. You will only lose strength, and that's all. You need to stop communicating. Stop communicating so closely. You're burning out now. You're complaining to me about their statements. And I'm telling you that you need to think about yourself, about your life, because you are under the evil influence of your parents. It's called unfavorable communication. You won't prove anything to them, so there's no point in talking to them. Imagine people sitting in the hall to whom I can't explain anything. Does it make sense for me to talk or not? I had such a situation. Once a police colonel invited me. He listened to my lectures, so he invited me to the police academy to give lectures. 500 policemen gathered. When I entered there, I heard, "Attention, at ease, sit down." They sat down. A person ran up to me. "You have 45 minutes. And they were looking at me. The first 15 minutes I tried to speak about practical things. They were just looking at me, without blinking at all, just like that. And I became terrified in such an atmosphere. Can you imagine? And then I started to tell them about the influence of planets on a person and mentioned the planet Mars. And I said that the planet Mars is the planet of willpower, courage. They started to listen. I said, "This is the planet of the police." Everyone immediately got engaged. I also explained to them that this planet is not only associated with male willpower, but also with male potency. Therefore, I explained that strong-willed, courageous men have very strong potency. And then they started to listen to me very seriously. And then, when I told them that when a man behaves cruelly and rudely with people, the planet Mars comes into antagonism with him, and he gets gastritis, bronchitis, and impotence from this. As they heard this, the last 20 minutes of the lecture were successful. I got the right wavelength, so to speak, and then everything was very good. I explained how to punish a person without getting impotence. It turned out to be a practical lecture. Did you hear me? You need your husband's help. You are strongly attached to your parents and won't be able to handle this situation on your own.